Psychology and philosophy show up in our lives all the time, not just in books or therapy sessions, but in the way people chase excitement, try to control things, or search for something deeper. You see it in movies, in relationships, even in everyday decisions. Analyzing films is like understanding myths, but most old mythology feels far away from our daily lives, while movies speak to us in ways we can feel. The patterns in myths, movies, and even our dreams are the same. They're all meaningful parts of the human experience. We all share a basic psychological map that we relate to and move around in. Stories show us that map in so many different ways we can connect with and learn from. Following the hero's path is really about becoming more aware of that inner map in our own psyche. To Catch a Thief, on the surface, it's a stylish, fun story set on the sunny French coast. But underneath, it's playing out some archetypal patterns that can be amplified to teach us about ourselves. There is Francie, the young, thrill-seeking woman who treats the world like a buffet she can take from at will. She flies high along the cliff roads, trying to pull Robie back into his old life as a daring thief. She wants the thrill and the adventure while ignoring any real consequences. On the anima appearing in popular culture, including film, Jung said, "They accept her easily enough when she appears in novels or as a film star, but she is not understood at all when it comes to seeing the role she plays in their own lives." Robie the cat is the reformed jewel thief trying to stay out of trouble. He is living a static, domesticated existence with his housekeeper, Germaine, in his hilltop villa. Marie-Louise von Franz had this to say about the Puer Aeternus, or the Peter Pan type. In general, the man who is identified with the archetype of the Puer Aeternus remains too long in adolescent psychology. That is, all those characteristics that are normal in a youth of 17 or 18 are continued into later life, coupled in most cases with too great a dependence on the mother. Fate intervenes, and he finds himself caught between the possibility of real renewal and the pull of his criminal past, or worse, jail or being killed. Then there is the darker regressive side. Bertani, the restaurateur, functions as the negative Senex, the Captain Hook of the old gang. He pulls strings behind the scenes and uses Robie as a distraction to protect his own operation. The negative Senex is the reductive side of the father archetype, resisting change. Marie-Louise von Franz says, "The negative side of the Senex is cynicism, rigidity, materialism, reluctance to change, and a lack of a sense of humor." Danielle carries the negative anima energy, seductive, possessive, and tied to the regressive pull of the past. The anima is bipolar and can therefore appear positive one moment and negative the next. Now young, now old, now mother, now maiden, now a good fairy, now a witch, now a saint, now a whore. She dreams of escaping with Robie to a childish fantasy life in South America. The insurance man Hughson offers the positive Senex, pragmatic, collaborative, and willing to take a calculated risk. He supplies Robie with a list of high-value jewel owners and even disguises himself as the Moorish dancer to cover Robie's rooftop work. Von Franz, in her work on the Puer Aeternus, gave a clear description of the positive Senex as the balanced counterpart to the eternal youth. Positively, he is a balanced person who is grounded, patient, conscientious, risk-averse, and controlled. And running through it all is the pressure from the police and the system. They function less like active criminals and more like the ego itself, a neutral but insistent force that wants to label everything, file it away neatly, and make the mysteries safe and manageable. The ego is the I that wants to maintain a coherent, controllable, conscious life and often experiences the unconscious as threatening chaos or loss of control. The ego prefers order and a good public image. It doesn't want to be constantly disrupted by dramatic waves from the unconscious. In one scene, we see Hitchcock using the kind of compensatory symbolism that often appears in dreams. As Francie speeds wildly along the roads above the Riviera, her reckless flight is suddenly interrupted by an old woman carrying laundry across the street. The puella aeterna, the eternal girl in her Peter Pan-like escape, is stopped in the most ordinary way by a quiet representative of the mother archetype. It is the grounded, mature feminine stepping in to halt the manic flight and bring a moment of reality. Two opposing sides of the anima compensating for one another. At the same time, the police chase gets stopped by a chicken, the instinctive animal disrupting sterile reason. It's a perfect little moment showing how the push for freedom and the push for control can both run into something bigger and unexpected. Here is another scene that doesn't really move the logical storyline forward, but carries a clear symbolic charge. After yet another jewel robbery, the group is gathered in the hotel room. Francie casually invites Robie to go for a swim. Hughson, worried about another insurance claim, nervously suggests they should instead take the funicular railway and go up, up, up to get a clearer view. Robie replies with a smile, "I don't even know how to spell funicular." It's a moment of symbolic opposition. Hughson represents the upward pull of the rational mind, the desire to rise above the confusion into clear investigative heights. Robie, by contrast, is comfortable working down in the shadows. This film is really about what happens when we try to steal fire from the gods through desire or cleverness, and how that can distance us from deeper meaning. John Robie embodies a classic Puer Aeternus who has reached a fragile retirement but remains emotionally suspended. After surviving the fight against the tyrannical father during the Nazi occupation as a resistance fighter, he has settled into a static life in his elegant hilltop villa. The cat, who hasn't left the villa in years, is now domesticated, well-fed, graceful, and no longer prowling the rooftops of risk or the unconscious. This new containment comes largely through the seductive grip of the negative mother, embodied by his housekeeper, Germaine, and the comfortable villa itself. Yet the psyche will not allow true stasis. A new wave of copycat burglaries reactivates his shadow, and the unconscious begins its quiet but insistent demand for movement toward the self. Robie has always carried a resistance to the established order. We could call him a classic Puer Aeternus or Peter Pan type, much like Francie. He carries a negative father complex, a deep reluctance to settle into respectable, rule-bound society. He arrived in Europe with a circus. When that folded, he chose the life of a thief, an act of rebellion against a positive father and against ordinary integration. The whole film keeps circling the same question. Can the eternal youth finally be integrated into society without sliding back into criminality? Germaine, the housekeeper, carries a name that quietly echoes German. It hints at an unconscious alliance between the negative mother and the tyrannical father figure. When Robie speaks of her to Hughson with dark humor, Germaine has sensitive hands and exceedingly light touch. She strangled a German general once, without a sound. We see the dual nature of that motherly presence. The same hands that prepared delicate meals once closed silently around the man's throat. By the end of the film, Francie joins Robie's life. Her name clearly evokes France. The regressive mother figure gives way to the positive anima. A state of psychological stasis is replaced by movement, renewal, and the possibility of genuine relationship. Robie has fallen from resistance against the negative father into enmeshment with a static negative mother. But mistaken identity pulls him back into the world. He wants no part of Danielle's regressive escape fantasy, nor does he immediately jump onto Francie's sparkling adventure. He simply wants to clear his name and return to his static life. Even in his attempted getaway, the archetype pursues him. Fleeing the police, Robie boards a public bus and finds himself seated beside a birdcage. The fluttering birds, vital, winged life, confined and carried passively, become a living emblem of his own suspended state. Robie glances at them with clear discomfort before turning away. Life is telling him that nature does not allow true stasis. The self, like the unconscious, abhors a vacuum. The copycat crimes and these symbolic encounters keep forcing movement. The cat must eventually prowl again, or risk losing its essential nature to neurosis. The rough fellows from Bertani's restaurant function beautifully as shadow bearers of the collective masculine. At the head of the criminal operation stands Bertani himself. He represents himself as the old comrade still looking out for Robie. In reality, he is the mastermind behind the new wave of thefts. He uses Danielle as the new cat burglar while maintaining his respectable restaurant as cover. And he uses Robie as a distraction and potential scapegoat. In archetypal terms, Bertani functions as a negative Senex, the manipulative Captain Hook who offers the appearance of guidance while trying to trick or sacrifice Peter Pan. His help serves his own interests first. Sometimes the people and structures from our past become regressive containers. They feel familiar and trustworthy, yet they can tie us to old patterns. At the same time, these shadow challenges often force confrontation and movement, opening the way for new figures and possibilities. In this case, Francie and the positive Senex energy represented by Hughson. H. Hughson, the insurance man from Lloyd's, is the positive Senex figure. Pragmatic and quietly flexible, he chooses to team up with the former thief rather than suppress him. He gives Robie the list of high-value jewel owners, luminous symbols of the self, and actively supports his undercover work. Their collaboration is generative. Two men from different worlds find a way to work together without one needing to dominate the other. Yet the old pattern does not surrender easily. In the flower market, an old woman, a mother figure, symbolically ties Robie to a tree. The gesture looks almost tender, but it is a quiet ritual of containment. As Robie begins to move toward a different kind of future based on mutual respect rather than suspicion, the maternal world tightens its hold. The emergence of a positive Senex often triggers resistance from the negative mother complex, because a healthy father alliance threatens the old symbiotic pattern. Hughson represents the positive Senex, the wise, generative father figure who supports rather than controls. This stands in clear contrast to the regressive pulls around Robie. Danielle offers the fantasy of escaping to South America and returning to the old criminal life, while Germaine provides the static, domestic containment of the negative mother. Robie, however, chooses differently. He consciously re-engages his shadow through the copycat burglaries, rejects Danielle's regressive fantasy, and turns instead toward Francie, whom he recognizes as a woman rather than a girl. He sees in her something of his own past Peter Pan energy, that restless, headstrong quality of someone long used to attracting attention without ever being deeply touched. With characteristic directness, he tells her she needs 2 weeks with a good man at Niagara Falls. The line names her real hunger for intensity and suggests that only a strong, grounded, masculine presence could truly satisfy her. At the same time, Robie keeps himself safely at a distance by speaking about what she needs from a good man rather than offering himself. He underestimates her. Francie already knows he used to be a jewel thief and that the police are watching him closely. As she drives wildly along the cliff roads, trying to pull him back into the thrill of flight, an old woman carrying laundry steps into the road and forces her to stop. It is the great mother archetype interrupting the puella aeterna, the mature, grounded feminine halting Peter Pan's reckless escape. This moment foreshadows Francie's deeper transformation, from a narcissistic tourist falling in love with excitement and image to a woman capable of sincere feeling. Even the police chasing them are comically stopped by a chicken, the instinctual world disrupting controlling reason, and giving the couple a brief, quiet space in which something real can begin to emerge. Francie does not accept Robie's distance. She sets up a private evening in her suite and makes it clear that if he fails to appear, she will page him wherever he goes as John Robie the cat. She forces his hand. That night brings the famous fireworks scene. As the sky explodes in bursts of light, Francie offers herself explicitly, presenting herself as the ultimate living jewel. When Robie comments that her necklace is only an imitation, she replies with bold seduction, "But I'm not." The next morning brings a sharp reversal. Francie's mother's jewels have been stolen. The spell is broken. When Robie refuses to stay in the romantic bubble and instead keeps his focus on exposing the real thief, her inflated sense of specialness collapses. She becomes frantic and accusatory, trying to regain the upper hand by blaming him and even trying to hand him over to the police. Her mother Jessie, far more worldly, cuts through the performance. Just what exactly did he steal from you? The question lands with force, exposing Francie's lack of maturity. Jessie belongs to a different age, an age in which the shadow aspects of life were more openly acknowledged. She likes Robie precisely because he is familiar with the darkness that everyone carries. For Francie, the fall is sudden. The night before had carried the quality of a private paradise. Now that illusion collapses. She experiences a kind of expulsion from Eden. Robie, however, does not take the bait. He remains focused on the real task, finding the actual thief. When she rushes to open the door for the police, Robie has already disappeared. He has escaped to the rooftops, his natural element. Francie's rejection of the shadow and her accusation against Robie trigger an outburst of police activity. The police function here like the ego, the neutral aspect of the psyche that mobilizes whenever it is pushed by powerful dynamism. As is typical in Hitchcock's work, outer events mirror inner ones. When the world around him turns chaotic, Robie does something quietly radical. He goes fishing. Fishing becomes his introverted refuge. It is a symbolic act of meditative thinking, lifting instinctual life and blind archetypal identification toward consciousness. In response to Francie's negative anima, Robie turns toward the positive father. He contacts Hughson, who believes him. Together they focus on the Silvers, the South American couple, as the likely next target. Silver is the realm of the moon, and the scene plays out in moonlight, representing the feminine and the unconscious from the standpoint of masculine consciousness. Robie is attempting to catch and understand the shadow aspect, the part that falls into identification with archetypes and tries to silence the one who might expose the flaws in its demiurgic construction of elusive reality. The South American couple reference echoes Danielle's earlier fantasy of escaping with Robie to South America, a virgin country, a paradise supposedly free of corruption. It is a projection of an outer solution that requires no inner work. Robie refuses to follow that elusive reality, but the negative mother and anima are not easily dismissed. They attempt to kill or detain him. That night at the Silvers he gets lucky and chance intervenes. Foussard, Danielle's father, tries to kill Robie that night, but ends up dead in the water himself. The police are eager to close the case. They tell the press that Foussard was the cat burglar. Robie can now move freely, but instead of disappearing, he walks straight into the police commissioner's office and exposes the flaw in their theory. Foussard had a wooden leg and could not have climbed across rooftops. The case is not solved. Robie's work continues. At Foussard's funeral, Danielle accuses him of murder in front of the mourners. Everyone present knows that Robie was the one they tried to kill that night, and that Foussard died by chance. Danielle's outburst reveals something deeper. A person who cannot grow up remains trapped in a fantasy world of childhood projections. With her father now dead, her protected state of naive escapism has been shattered. She is mourning the loss of her imaginary Neverland escape with Robie to South America, a place where parents are archetypes, friends are lost boys, and time and consequence do not exist. She never wanted a real partner or husband. She wanted a Peter Pan who would keep her suspended in eternal youth. In response to her hysteric outburst, Robie reacts by slapping her across the face like a child. Then he walks through the parting crowd as if he were no longer touchable by them. With Foussard gone and Danielle no longer trying to seduce or trap him, a significant portion of his shadow has been cleared. He leaves the graveyard and walks out of the realm of the dead. Waiting for him outside the graveyard is Francie, no longer held back by shadow forces. She is ready to admit her true feelings. She apologizes and confesses her love for him. Robie does not soften. If she wants to set things right, he tells her, she must provide an invitation to the Sanford Gala so he can finally catch the real cat burglar. Francie is no longer amused by crime like a little girl. She shows genuine, mature concern for his safety. Robie replies simply, "Not for tourists." In this context, tourists is a cynical reference to a narcissistic way of living, experiencing life only as a surface reflection and falling in love with that reflection rather than becoming meaningfully involved with reality. Like so many people who find deep engagement with anything of substance offensive or threatening, Francie had been one of those tourists, but something in her has shifted. She tells him, "I'm in love with you." Robie answers, "To you, words are just playthings." Francie quietly corrects him, "Were playthings." She has changed. She no longer sees the world as a shallow reflection of her own psyche, while disregarding the real suffering around her. Robie knows that the archetypal aspect of the cat burglar will keep returning in his life until he finally hands it over to the police. That is, until he brings it into conscious knowledge through the ego. That is why the pursuit of truth has become important to him, as it should be to us all. At the Sanford Gala, French period dresses and high-value jewelry create a glittering display of wealth and illusion. Hughson and Robie, working with Jessie and Francie, execute their plan. A plan devised by Francie. They switched the Moorish costume after deliberately identifying the Moor as Robie to Bertani and the police. Danielle appears at the ball in a French period peasant outfit. While the guests are still present, she slips away and changes into her black cat burglar outfit to commit the actual robberies on the roof. From his rooftop vantage point, Robie watches as Bertani opens the door of a car for someone wearing Danielle's period costume. Believing this to be Danielle leaving the event, he feels a wave of disappointment. He had suspected her all along. Only after the decoy has driven away does the real Danielle appear on the roof. She has been robbing the guests after all. Robie extracts a confession from Danielle and then saves her life by pulling her up from the edge of the roof. Hitchcock also uses this image in North by Northwest when Cary Grant pulls Eva Marie Saint up the face of Mount Rushmore. A character being physically lifted from a dangerous height is a metaphor for being pulled back from the unconscious. Robie does not destroy the shadow. Instead, he brings it into consciousness and hands it over to the legal system. In psychological terms, he has become conscious of this aspect of the shadow and is now able to relate to it without being possessed or destroyed by it. Francie, meanwhile, wears a golden dress. She is the alchemical gold, the reward earned through the long period of transformation. The golden outfit also represents a mature recapturing of the stolen jewels, no longer trying to use the world for her own pleasure or to feed her inflation. Francie now relates to life with genuine involvement. Having played an instrumental part in devising the plan to expose the real cat burglar, she functions as the helping hand, extended by the collective unconscious in the form of the anima. Intuition and inspiration that support forward movement once a progressive tendency has been established. The old, slowly dying status quo has been replaced by something new, ready for a fresh life to emerge.